Hello, we're Group 2. Our project is on drone design, and we're going to explain it a little bit. My name is Ricardo Olazo, that's Angel Mendoza, and Gilbert.
I'm going to start by introducing you to a couple of the common words that we're going to encounter when we're learning about drones. So UAV is a big buzzword that gets thrown around a lot nowadays. It's a term that's used for basically any aircraft that is remote piloted or flown without a pilot on the aircraft. So a UAV can be autonomous or controlled from the ground by a pilot. The word drone is a more recent word used to describe UAVs that have more of a military focus. So common drones are going to be investigated later, especially some interesting military ones. So we'll move on to the next slide and talk about the beginnings of drone flight. The first actual documented case of an unmanned aerial vehicle happened around the early 1400s when the Austrian military actually strapped a bunch of bombs and explosives to hot air balloons and sent them across their border to Venice in an attempt to attack the Italian military. These bombs ironically floated back and were an unsuccessful use of UAVs as they ended up bombing the Austrians who sent them in the first place. However, that's the first time we see that advantage of having no pilot and delivering a payload. So the word drone comes again to use in the 1960s during the Vietnam War, when a lot of older aircraft were being repurposed by the US Air Force as targets. So these drones, as they were being called, were remote piloted, and fighter pilots in actual aircraft would practice shooting them down. And that's the first modern military drone application. As this technology improved over time, drones were adapted for civilian uses, just like many other technologies which start with military applications. The current state-of-the-art military drone is the MQ-9 Predator, and the Predator is the classic military drone shape, that very distinct silhouette. We see a lot of controversy coming about with the separation of pilot from tactical and dangerous missions. But drones and their military uses have kind of dwindled when we're talking about the private sector. We don't really encounter any sort of drones that have those purposes. Now we're seeing, rather than fixed wing type aircraft, we're seeing a lot of modified copter craft. So we'll see here an example of a movie production drone. So it's actually used to capture Hollywood movies. They are used instead of helicopters. They're more affordable, and they have a lot of other benefits. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide, and I'll let my partner continue the presentation.
Of drones, since the United States is the world leader developing and designing drones, the U.S. Department of Defense created a chart to classify these drones based on the performance characteristic of the drones. For example, the gross takeoff weight. This means how much load the drone is capable to lift. This my views, for example, with Amazon is trying to do, like delivering packaging using drones. The size, what are the dimensions of the drones, how big is your drone, the normal operating altitude, how high is your drone capable to fly. This will give you an advantage to know if your drone is capable for certain tasks as spying or field recognition. The airspeed is how fast is your drone capable to fly. Another characteristic of the drones are, for example, what motor is your drone using. It might be a turbine, it might be a piston engine, it might be an electric motor. Next. Now let's get focused on the drones that most of us know, the drones that we can actually build or buy. These are the non-military examples, and all these drones fall under the group 1 on the previous table. For example, we have the quadcopter, the hexacopter, the octocopter, This is the V-tail drone that is mostly used for race purposes. Now let's overview the major components of the drone. In this case, this is a layout of a typical quadcopter. Here are the major components of the quadcopter. Here we have the controller or the transducer, which will let you interact and control the velocity position of the drone. Will also let you to record videos, take pictures, everything that your drone is capable to do. Then in the drone we have the receiver, which basically is the antenna. This receiver will get all the radio waves and translate all those waves to a computer language that the flight controller is going to interpret. And the flight controller is basically the brain of the drone. Is what actually interact with the other components, such as the gyroscope, the compass, the GPS, the motors. Connected to the flight controller, we have, between the flight controller and the motors, we have the ECS, which is the electronic speed control. This electronic speed control will allow you to control individually the speed of the motors, of the motor of your drones by changing the voltage flowing through the motor. These are the motors, are regular brushless motors. Attached to the motors, we have the impeller or propellers, which are also called blades. Depending on the size of the propellers, it will make your drone capable to lift more weight or less weight. We also have the battery. The battery is important. Depending on the battery, you are going to have the flying time. If you need a drone for high performance purposes, it's important to upgrade the battery. Next. Now, something to keep in mind while maneuvering the drone is that the drone is capable to move along the three axes. It will go forward, it will go side to side, and it will go up and down. But also, what makes the drone different from a vehicle like a bicycle or a car is that the drone can spin on along three different axes. For example, if you make the drone spin along let's call this the x-axis, that movement will be called roll. If you make it spin along the y-axis, that will make it called pitch. And if your drone spins along the z-axis, that movement is called yaw. Continuing with the pros and cons for these drones, Ricardo.
So I want to talk to you about the advantages and disadvantages of the drone flight. Now, clearly the most important advantage that we have is, as Gilbert had mentioned before, the fact that it's unmanned. What does this mean? It means that it does not put the pilot in harm's way. Another advantage is the low price relative to the actual size of whatever plane or helicopter you're trying to replace. Now, drones, as we know, have become really, really small, and they range from $15 all the way up to a few $1,000. Now, due to the size and mobility, as Angel had mentioned, we can introduce drones into spaces that we couldn't before. Whether it's a new technology that's coming out where a drone can turn out a building on fire, to a drone recording a movie in a set where now you don't need a helicopter to shoot the scene because helicopters produce a lot of noise. Drones are known to be very, very silent. Being unmanned, we know that the drone can actually be included in a espionage mission or other things where the drone can also be disposed of very easily. It's not a big issue for the operator. Now, the disadvantages. The most important one is one that is recurring. We see almost every day is privacy. Drones have cameras attached, and they're flying in private sectors and recording things that they should not be. And this is probably the biggest issue that we have in the private sector. Targeting systems are being improved, Maybe at one point we'll have one that can actually make decisions for themselves. And this is a little bit scary because if it makes a wrong decision, you know, it could have collateral damage as well as civilian casualties. Now, drone strikes are known to cause a lot of stress to the operator, and that also emotional and psychological stress. So, due to the low cost of the that goes in drone making, you never know who's actually flying the drone. There has been a case where a guy attached a gun to a drone and started shooting, and that's very scary because you never know who could be causing harm. Now lastly, I'm going to talk to you about the future improvements. One of the coolest things that we found when we were doing the research was an idea where drones could actually be flown by your brain, by your mind. And it could be very helpful, as well as like on military cases where like the military spy mosquito is being created, which will extract DNA from a target, and you can also do other things like espionage. So as technology progresses, there's a lot of features and ideas that can be introduced in this. It is a growing technology, and it honestly has no limits. Thank you.